I'll put this boss right here versus Miyabi. It's honestly not that bad considering all the factor. Someone told me that Miyabi has a disadvantage against this boss because of the anti-crit mechanic, which I will disagree. The boss still ice weak and the anomaly build-up meter is normal, so the rotation would still play out quite well, and the anti-crit debuff has a cleansing mechanic built into it. We see in my previous video, even though Ithari is a fully crit character because of her high ice build-up with Lycon, she can reduce the debuff considerably to not be at maximum 125% crit damage reduction. And at the end of the run, she managed to fully cleanse all the debuff. And that's also the case for Miyabi here. As long as you keep triggering disorders, mid-stun rotation, all the debuff will be cleansed and Miyabi crit damage will be whole again. And it's not like the debuff is on for the whole fight, it only applied when the boss enter win state, which is 2 times, so only half of stun 2 and stun 3 will be debuffed by it. But again, it's not really a problem for Miyabi. The meta for Miyabi Yuzuha is AP build Miyabi anyway, where the damage from her enhanced basic and ultimate crit hits is about the same as the damage from her shatter and disorders. Though this is a really high-end Miyabi build where you need to build 4 different substats, which is quite tedious to farm. And if the crit damage is going to be debuffed anyway, why not go all in on anomaly damage, which is the idea of this fusion compiler Miyabi run. We built just enough Miyabi crit rate to sustain her anomaly build-up, because she converts her crit rate to anomaly build-up, and we are not just focusing on enhanced basic on each stun, but also the ice disorder counts. Now there's an argument that the current buff is bad and gives nothing for Miyabi, which this one I agree, if you are playing Lycon Mono Ice or Yuzu Ice, which in my opinion will be harder in this case. For Nanggong, it's different story. You know Nanggong proc a bloom inside stun, right? The buff will at least be on 70% of the time. The stage buff also doesn't really give anything beside the debuff, as the bloom damage buff is not useful for Miyabi, which is also fair, but this is still far from a disadvantage run. I would say it's challenging, but in no way deserving a Miyabi counter mental. Miyabi is still a good ice DPS for the new ice anomaly weakness boss. This video is sponsored by Enjoy.gm. Enjoy.gm is a top-up site for ZZZ and many other anime-style gacha game. New user right now will get an 8% discount on their purchase. And as you can see here also, your first purchase would also get a 20% off discount. All you need to do is enter your UID and select your server. No game login information required. After your first purchase with the previous new member discount bonus, you'll then unlock the member exclusive pricing, which you can also apply the 8% site-wide coupon for more saving. Enjoy.gm is PCI DSS certified. I use it myself and never have any problem, though if you do, there's always a 24/7 customer service to help you. The customer reviews are also good, and for my Indonesian peeps, there's a wide amount of easy payment method to use here, so you don't need an international payment method to enjoy the discount bonus. Thank you to Enjoy.gm for sponsoring this video. This run rotation is not my own. I'm only replicating a great run by this person on Bilibili. You'll see in the run where there's some unintuitive routing that would be weird in the vacuum, but actually optimum in this scenario. I feel this is an empirical heavy rotation routing where it is found by trial and error with many experimenting on all the possible routing, which is really impressive. The reference video is in the description if you wanna check their other videos. Because of that, I don't feel quite right doing a detailed breakdown on this run since I'm basically just following a direction, but I will point out some important part of the rotation later in this video. At first, I was going to also give a Miyabi Nanggong Yuzuha rotation guide in this video, but I think this run is not a good introductory example. Instead, I think I'll make a detailed guide next season with the Notorious Butcher comeback. Subscribe to stay tuned for that. So let's answer your possible questions. Why is my score is only 56.6k while the reference score is 57.8k? Easy answer is my fusion compiler is only R4 while the reference is R5, and my Miyabi build has 4 less substats, which I think is a fair score difference considering the build diff. Maybe I could get 200 to 300 more score, but that brings us to the crit fishing topic, the biggest RNG factor of this run. As you see, Miyabi on Fusion Compiler only has about 70% crit rate, so there's definitely some of her attacks and frostburn that didn't crit. After I watched the reference video, I trained starting on the first stun rotation for about 15 minutes until I can execute it quite well, then slowly moving to the second stun, third stun, and last stun. Took me about 3 hours to memorize the routing. After that, I just have to keep repeating the routing until I get a high score for about 2 hours, which surprisingly my runs has a very fluctuating score. One time I got 500 less score on my first stun rotation, and when I checked the recording, it's because all of my frostburn didn't hit crits. So there's the RNG factor of this run. But I believe I followed the routine quite well to a T with some improvisation and some part the writing improved the run by a bit, but only by a bit. The reference is already an insane run. The run actually has a really low RNG factor in it. First pre-stun, the opening always the same, so starting off easy. And the defensive assist after the second and third stun is also consistent. The 4 defensive assist when the boss enter win state always happens like that, as long as you follow the routine. And the only RNG factor is the last pre-stun, where we need 3 defensive assists to get Nangong disables for ultimate, which is kinda suck for a run killer to be at the end of the run. I would say the last stun success rate is about 50% chance. You'll find that my Nangong build here is really high end. The rotation doesn't incorporate quick assist routine to stack astral voice buff for Miyabi, so instead the idea is to make Nangong a sub DPS with her decent anomaly damage, thanks to her signature and Phaeton's melody for peace. But Miyabi still deals the majority of the damage. It's just pushing the team score to the limit, and every bit of optimization can make the difference. One thing that kinda annoys me is that I find I have to hamster cage all my Nangong skill to 12 to follow the exact routing of the rotation. Before, I was comfortable leaving her basics, assist, EX, and ult level at 11, but the days meter shifted by quite a bit that it messes up the stun timing. This is the summary of the run. Turn 3 used 1 Yuza Assault to proc Ice Disorder, which is why there's 1 less Ether Disorders but 1 more Ice Disorder, which is good considering Ice Disorder deals more damage anyway. If you find that your score doesn't line up with the run reference, it's helpful to check if you did the correct disorder count on your rotation. The first stun may look weird to you, because normally Nangong did 2 Polarity Disorder plus Ice Disorders, it's already 6 stacks for Miyabi Enhanced Basic, right? So why waste that 6 stack for an ultimate? The answer is to make Miyabi Ice damage buff from her ultimate active at the beginning of the stun. If we follow the rotation where we spend the stack before ulting, the overall score will be slightly lower. And there's really no problem we wasted those 6 stacks, because you already see after that, the overall rotation can still maintain well. At the end of the stun window, you need to delay Yuza ultimate by a bit so that her ultimate finisher hits the boss outside of stun. This will manipulate its behavior to immediately goes to win state. If she doesn't hit the boss with her ultimate after the stun recovery, there will be considerable amount of dead time where the boss will do nothing. This wastes time considering 4 stun rotation is quite tight. Right before ending win state and entering the stun, you need to make sure Ice meter is almost full and ready to get proc. First, start with Nangong dazing to get us close to 99 days, and then Miyabi use her EX to trigger stun and trigger frostburn inside the stun. Important! The order is stun and frost. If you frost first then stun, it will not work out well, because Miyabi frosting on the win phase will count as vortex and not frost anomaly, and stunning the boss next will leave the boss anomalyless while inside the stun. This is already a damage loss in the disorder count perspective. One other interesting thing that I experimented before is win phase skipping like in the background here. Because Miyabi and Nangong both has high interruption level enhanced basic, it's actually quite possible to keep interrupting the boss so it doesn't enter win phase, straight into stun 2. This will make the debuff not get deployed, so theoretically should increase the overall performance, right? Well, I find that it's not the case. To keep interrupting the boss, you need to waste a lot of resource outside of stun, and it's better to gather your resources and focus on Miyabi Enhanced Basic and Disorder inside the stun. Without energy buff like in this condition, that might be bad for your next stun rotation. You might not have enough energy, or your anomaly meter setup may not be quite right. You can skip one win phase, but then there's also a problem. Your performance point will not be full 5000 if you didn't impair on 2 win phase, and you probably will not have enough resource to skip both win phase while also preparing resources for the third stun. At the end of the day, getting the defensive assist in the win phase to get the resources and do the stun setup is still the optimal routing.